Right?
The former Soviet Union,
I
but now
can't hear your accent any longer. I used to be able to hear it, but I can't hear it any longer. I heard it when we first started dating. London, Connecticut, go Northeasterners. All right. If you're just joining us, keep typing in the chat where you're from so we can get to know you.
Australia.
More
Awesome.
Australia. It's amazing. We love that you're here, and we're going to try to make tonight useful, valuable, answer your questions. We have a lot of questions to answer. Please feel free to type in the chat. Arizona, welcome. Hi, Ruth. Please feel free to type in the chat where, if you have a question. Barbados, I don't want to ignore anyone, right? So please feel free to keep typing. Crystal, Colorado, Maryland. We really have the whole world. We haven't seen anyone from Asia. Hi, California. Hi, Sherry. We haven't seen anyone from Asia yet. So if you're from Asia, don't be shy. Let us know.
California's kind of.
California's so blasé, right there. Everyone's from California. It's also, isn't that the 5th largest economy in the world?
Something about nature.
All right. So keep telling us where you're from. We're going to start reading the questions. And also, again, if we don't answer your question or if you didn't get a chance to submit, please feel free to put it into the chat. We will be monitoring it through the whole presentation. And I think
we may or may not be able to get to it. That's the only
we'll do our best.
Disclaimer.
We don't want to leave anyone out. All right. Redwood City, let's see. Okay, feel free to keep typing in the chat so we know where you're from. We're so excited you're here. And we're going to go in order of receipt, or at least in the order that our team gave it to us. So one thing that people brought up is that when they eat right and then they fast. So one question that came up is, when they fast, should you be consuming binders to bind the toxins that are getting released when you fast? Because when you're fasting, the body is technically resting and able to focus on detox. So should you take a binder so that these toxins aren't released and then re-uploaded? And if so, what binders do you recommend? You want to hit that one?
Sure. So
that sounded bad. Sorry.
So in terms of binders, it's always helpful. I mean, the question is first, do you have metals, or do you have mold, or do you have toxins? We all have some amount of toxins.
Right?
The question is how much, etc. So it's really hard to know what you need. There are some general ideas. For example, pectosol is amazing. It binds up a lot. That can be taken every day. It can and should be. The propylmanol, if there's any mold.
Konjac fiber is propylmannan fiber, and it binds all the strains of mycotoxins, which is fantastic. And it also helps clean up the gut.
We like, and our cats like, chlorella. Our cats really love chlorella.
One of our cats, well trained, they sit on the bed at night waiting for us to give them chlorella. It's
so
like a routine.
That's their treat for the day. So it's good.
It's good for us. It's good for them.
It's a win-win situation here.
The question that just came up that I'm going to address straight off is, how do you spell the mold binder? It's propylmannan. So we sell this because, this is what we do for a living. It's called Lean and Clean on our 5 Journeys website, which is 5journeys.com. It's called Lean and Clean. It's propylmannan, propylmannan. It comes from konjac, Konjac. I know there's a lot of L's and M's and N's. There you go. Thanks for adding that in, Brett.
So, well, the cool thing about it that is not only does it bind mold, but it's actually just good fiber. Yeah. So people use it for actually helping with their weight loss, because once it hits your body and it absorbs, it bubbles up, balloons up, and it takes up room in your belly, so you're not as hungry. So a lot of people use that actually to lose weight and win. So it gives you fiber, gives you poop. Helps you poop and moves the mold. So it's win-win all around.
Totally. All right. We're going to move on to the next question, which is, I have a positive ANA and anti-single strand DNA. What should I eat? This is, I think, the question that a lot of people ask, which is, what should I be eating? Let's start with big stuff.
Well, let's make the question more generalized. So the question is really, I have an autoimmune disease. Right. What do I eat for an autoimmune disease? So
for autoimmune disease, we are huge fans of the autoimmune paleo protocol because it takes away the majority of allergens from your eating. And that allows the body to quiet down. The thyroid loves this, all types of lupus, the multiple sclerosis, degenerative diseases really respond well to quieting down the immune system and taking away the things that trigger it. So you think about autoimmune paleo, it's paleo, but souped up. So no gluten, no dairy, no nuts, no seeds, no corn, soy, no egg. I know I'm missing something because
Yeah, there's a
I
whole
haven't run out of fingers yet. And there's lots of, I really have to count on my fingers.
there's a whole slew, and the point is really anything that's inflammatory,
Yeah.
take it out. And this may not be the rest of your life, and probably may not be sustainable, but you want to do it for at least a good 3 months. And I would say realistically 6 to 12 months is what you want to think about.
And I think about the sicker you are, the longer you're going to do it.
Right.
And the sicker you are, the longer it may take you to get back to baseline, crawl out of the hole. So use that as a guideline, right? The thyroid loves it, but it takes a little bit of time. It's like, I always say to people, it's like the Titanic. They saw that iceberg coming from miles away, but they still hit it. And then they had to clean up after they hit it. So think of yourself in the cleanup. What?
That's an
it's like an
interesting.
iceberg.
Okay.
All right.
Fair.
So let's move on to another question that's come up, which is, do you have a checklist of the symptoms and a questionnaire that can be downloaded? We're looking for a doctor to locate, and do you have someone to guide us to? So that's sort of a two-part question.
Yeah, so we have the quiz on our site. So definitely feel free to go on 5journeys.com. I think it's /quiz. If not, just look at it
I
on
just
the
put that in the I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah. So that's one way to look at it. I think there's a lot of questionnaires, but you really want to, the way it's very, we know some people, I mean, we have the best people on the summit because I mean, it's awesome.
Mind for
people.
gold.
We had to network the heck out of it to
get people like Mark Hyman.
Yeah. Mark Hyman's coming on board and
on this week.
On the what is it called, the weekend. Yep.
Yeah,
so it's
the replay weekend. So when you look at the checklist, and on our website we have a quiz that'll tell you how sick you are. And then I think the bigger question is, if you want to work with someone who's local to you, the best place to find a provider is ifm.org, and I'll put that in the chat also. Yeah, because you can find a provider.
So I know there was another question later on about a person in Australia.
Yeah.
And we just looked up ifm.org, and there was like 7 pages of providers.
Oh, 17, only 2 pages. Only 2 pages, 17 providers.
Oh, it was 17. Okay.
But Australia is massive. So I'm hoping they do telemedicine in Australia, because it's a really big area. So, but you could certainly find someone in Australia to work with.
Yeah, we actually had a client that just moved to Australia, so I'm working remotely with her. So that's kind of fun. But the restrictions are much harder because they don't have all the supplements, and some of them are different.
How do you do with the time difference? I'm not sure I want to know the answer to that question. Let's keep moving on the questions.
Okay.
So the one question came up, which is, how does one get rid of toenail fungus? And it has spread to all toes on both feet, and you no longer use public swimming pools or public showers. What suggestions? I love this question. Thank you, Michael, for submitting it. He's in Canada. So we actually, I went to a podiatrist years ago, and he so kindly offered to charge me $1,000 per toe to do laser on it. And I said to him, with all due respect, I really can think of a better use for $5,000 than lasering my toes. Like, that just doesn't quite fit my vision of life. And he's like, yeah, I totally understand. So instead you can use this thing called Formula 7, which is like a paint on gel that you put on your toenails, and you put on your toes twice a day, morning and night, and it works. It takes a long time to work. So it's not like you do it and then 3 days later it's done. It's like you do it months, and you have to grow out the toe until the healthy nail takes over and has no mold. It is, the fungus comes, it is at risk for coming back, just to warn you that it often will recur. But like, we sell it on our website at 5journeys.com because so many people have toenail fungus.
Yeah, and don't forget, you have to still get all the basics done. You have to stop the sugar. You have to make sure that your metals are not there. You have to do all the fundamentals. It's not just the more chance you have of recurring is if you're not doing the basics and just try to attack the toe. So definitely do the basics.
Okay.
But we had Nick ask about, is there any negative side effects or negative effects of reducing that many foods in the diet? So
Yes. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, for me, I'd say a lot of my patients, the negative part is when you go back, you don't feel good on a lot of them because they make you feel like junk and you can't eat them again. That's the worst part. It's
right. You see how bad it makes you feel. But more than that, if you start with leaky gut and you limit the number of foods you're eating, then yes, you can raise your sensitivity to the foods that are left, which is why we always recommend work with a nutritionist who's certified in functional nutrition or does functional medicine nutrition, and also make sure you rotate your diet. Rotating your diet means that in a 4-day period, you try not to repeat foods. And then on day 5, you start the rotation again so that you can have as broad a range for the foods as possible. Ed is going to our website right now because Lori popped up a question about what's your website for the health quiz. So Ed's getting the link for it.
so it is 5journeys.com/health-IQ.
Health-IQ.
Yeah, that's equal. Just
Oops.
one line.
Health-IQ.
There we go.
We good?
Yep.
All right. There
So
you go. I
that's
put that in the link.
And then Petra, thank you. The tea tree oil definitely for some people works. We've used it. And we'll put up the fungus toenail URL, but tea tree we've used in the past. It doesn't seem to be as effective for our patients as the Formula 7, but it is effective.
Ed's also going to look for the URL for the toenail fungus while I'm taking another question.
That actually might be off our
Oh, really?
website.
It's a hidden site.
If you want it through us,
just
send us.
We can only ship in the United States, just to warn people. I know it's not to be discriminatory. We just can't ship things across the countries because they just don't seem to get there, unfortunately. Okay, let's see. There's a question about, given the importance of bile to the gut microbiome, what are the consequences of gallbladder removal? Alan, this is a great question. And what remediation, if any, is possible? You want to take that one?
Sure. So let's talk about why you need your gallbladder in the first place. So your liver creates bile, and bile helps emulsify fat. So helps put fat and helps digest fat. So what happens is the liver creates it, it's stored in the gallbladder, and then the gallbladder pumps it out, and in a big burst when you eat fat. If you don't have your gallbladder, it will leak slowly, and so you're not digesting fat well, and you need things like ox bile to help with digestion, and obviously that will change your microbiome and not allow you to digest very well and not feed them the good bacteria that you need.
Yeah, so we always recommend, if you've had your gallbladder taken out, that you take digestive support. And there's tons of options that ox bile is an amazing option to make sure you're getting, because it does help break down the foods. So these are kinds of things you can send us emails about to direct you towards products, because we have a lot of people who have their gallbladder out. Yeah,
I just want to make sure. Again, the toenail, I just looked at for the Formula 7. It's not on their website. And the reasons I remembered it's not on their website, that's what I was worried about, was we couldn't actually, the company doesn't allow us to sell it online. Just send us an email. We're happy to provide if that's a problem, if that's a question. All right.
All right. Okay, now let's keep going. So one question we got from Val is, would you agree that diabetes is an autoimmune disease? what other interventions between diet and exercise would you suggest to reverse diabetes?
That's a big question.
I know, right? I was just on recording a summit. It's the metabolic summit for sugar-free kids. And he's all about being sugar-free. And I said to him, sugar's the devil. And he's like, oh, I'm totally making that a meme. So if you see a meme where I'm doing sugar's the devil on repeat, that's because the guy made it into a meme. Okay. So in terms of diabetes, yes, I would say it's an immune response. I don't know about autoimmune disease per se, more about a dysfunctional immune response to triggers. So one thing of obviously, yes, keto is amazing for diabetes, exercise. But then when you think about when you have a dysfunctional metabolic issue, it almost always tracks back to inflammation and dysfunction in the system. And guess what? We just did this whole seminar on toxins, because toxins are critically related to cardiovascular disease, diabetes, metabolic dysfunction, PCOS, fertility challenges. So when you have diabetes, it's always, to me, and I think I'll speak for you. I'm your wife. I'll speak for you anyway.
What's good with you about that?
So if you do have any type of metabolic dysfunction, then we always do recommend that you, of course, get the gut in order, and of course, change the way you're eating and make sure you're moving and sleeping, but that you really do look at toxins so that you can pull those off and ultimately at a cellular level get healthy. Okay.
So I just want to answer a few questions that have come up already, that from the chlorella point of view, the chlorella, super important. Not all chlorella is made equal. Chlorella, if grown, is amazing at detox even when it's alive. So it's going to pull any toxins that are in the water that it grows in. It is an algae, so you want to make sure it's super clean. The one we use is BioPure chlorella. It's on our website, but you want to make sure, you just have to make sure it's super clean. What's next?
So there's a few questions that have come in. I guess we're not keeping our word. We're going to kind of ask questions, answer questions as they come. So Lori, thank you so much for putting the question about multiple chemical sensitivities. A lot of people have these. If you can type in the chat what your question is, because it looks like a comment, but I want to make sure that if there's a question, we answer that for you.
There's a lot to do for multiple chemical sensitivities. Yeah. Definitely want to get to a functional medicine doctor. There's everything from toxins to low dose antigen therapy to all sorts of things that there's no one size fits all. That's the problem with this type of medicine. And it's the cool thing about this type of medicine, because there's always something more to look at, something more to discuss. So you're not limited to to having multiple chemical sensitivities the rest of your life.
Yeah. So I used to have it and it went away. When the healthier you get, the less you'll react, which is great. Yeah. Talia, you put in a question about how is propylmanin fiber for histamine wise. I actually don't know the answer to that off the question top of my head.
I don't know we have not had any problems with anybody that I know that has histamine that was on that. So I think that's, as far as our experience with it, it's very well tolerated.
I mean, it's a binder, so it should be quieting things.
Yeah.
All right, April, I love that you asked this question. Can I talk about perimenopause and menopause in terms of hormone therapy? So let me just say that our first book is Dirty Girl. You can see it behind me somewhere there. So the first book is Dirty Girl. The second book, which is coming out in 2024, is Sweaty and Bitchy: From Sex to Brain Function, Master Menopause, and Feel Freaking Amazing. So I can talk about it. It's what we do in our practice. It's the second book because one day, Ed, I was sitting in the car, it was summer, and it had like the mother of all hot flashes, and the car is not on. It's summer, and all my kids are in the car, so I can't really go in a rant. So Ed pokes his head in the car and asks me something. To this day, I don't remember what you asked me. And I looked at him, it was like The Exorcist, and I said, do you value your life? Turn on the car, because I'm having a hot flash. And I wasn't swearing because the kids were in the car. and I won't swear with you because this is a professional thing, but if I could have sworn, there would have been all of the expletives and all the 4-letter words. And Ed, being a really wise married man, took one look at me and was like, yes, dear, just turn the car on so I could turn the air on. So anyway, I could definitely talk about perimenopause. You get less resilient in this time of life. And so the things that you would kind of brush off and not impact you in the past, when you get perimenopausal, menopausal, your system is less resilient. So things bother you that wouldn't have bothered you in the past. And so, I mean, a big broad brush stroke is that if you're looking to minimize your risk of dementia, cognitive dysfunction, bone loss, it is a good idea to look at your hormones, treat hormones to at least symptom resolution, if not a little bit more if you're looking for bone health, and certainly for dementia, because there's good data that looks at that treating those will decrease your risk for those.
And cardiovascular disease.
Yeah, cardiovascular disease, mood changes, sleep changes. I mean, the list goes really, really extensive. That's why we wrote a book about it, because we were like, we gotta talk about that. So that's coming in 2024. Let's see.
Yeah, that subject's just full. So
massive.
If there's any specific thing, we're happy to answer it, but that's too broad. I think you did a good job for a broad question.
What types of chlorella do you recommend for various toxins? So
I answered
you got that. Okay. And then I think we should go back to the questions that we got up front, and we'll come back to these questions. We won't forget about you. But I will say, Joy, yes, I had multiple chemical sensitivities. I made my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law stop wearing perfume when they came to my house because it was so strong. It was so offensive. I was like, we don't want to smell you when you leave. And I don't want to smell you when you're here either, because I'm having an asthma attack. And, it got better. I still don't like the perfume, but I no longer have an asthma attack.
Yeah, before we come back, maybe we'll answer Jenna's question in terms of
I'm not a good one to ask.
40 supplements. Well,
a lot of supplements.
It's a lot of supplements. It's a whole range, and there's no answer. Some people do well with 3 supplements. That's all they can tolerate. And some people take 80 supplements and they're happy because they feel the best they can at 80. So it really depends on your body, what you're coming in for, why you're using it. You do have to be careful of overloading and making sure the quality is super important of supplements. You can get supplements with mold, you can get supplements with heavy metals, you can get supplements with nothing that says is in there because nobody really regulates it. So making sure high quality supplements is as important as what the names of the supplements and what's in it. And I'm not a huge fan of I love Amazon. He's my boyfriend. He sends me everything, but I don't get supplements off of Amazon because their warehouses aren't necessarily temperature related. So you don't want to get stuff that's been sitting in too hot, because then it gets inactivated. So you always want to buy your supplements from someone reliable and trustworthy. Okay, going back to the pre-submitted questions. I currently live in Australia. We talked about this. If you live in Australia and you're looking for a provider, go to ifm.org. And here, I'll put that in the chat. Did I do that before? I'll do it again. There we go, ifm.org. And you can, right at the top is find a practitioner. So you can find someone. And I'm glad you enjoyed the summit, Nick. And then let's see. Yevgenia had a question, applying the 80-20 rule. This is a hard question, just for the record. What 20% of environmental toxicants, when eliminated, will have the most positive effect on health and well-being? That's a hard question. Well, it's a hard question because it depends first of all, what affects you, and then what you're exposed to. So if you're eating tuna sushi every day, all day, or even 3 times a week, well, that's the biggest one because that has huge amount of mercury in it. If you're living in a moldy house, get rid of that. So it's impossible.
Remediate your mold or move.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Just expanding.
So it's really what you're exposed to. But if you're generally living healthy, in terms of you're not exposed to high mercury fish like tuna, swordfish, maki, Chilean sea bass, your house is pretty good quality, no mold. Maybe let's get a water filter, a whole house water filter, and clean up the water. It's really always looking for the next level, and there's always the next level.
Yeah.
And are you filtering your air properly? And are there
How about your
microfibrils in the
brain?
air?
Your 65,000 thoughts a day. Are you cleaning up your brain? But I would say this kind of ties into another one of the questions we got, which is ditch the plastic drinking things.
Yes.
Plastic water bottles, plastic jugs. Someone said, should I replace it with a 5-gallon instead of a single use? No, replace it with a glass 5-gallon or get a filter so that
Better
you
as a
can
filter.
filter the water. Because if you have glass big bottles, they do still need to be shipped. So then you get the sort of side effect of emissions and harm to the environment. And if Mother Earth isn't happy, we're not healthy. So the best you can do for the environment would be filter your water.
Right. So the idea is filter your water, take a glass bottle, fill it with that for the day, and then go.
Next question that Yevgenia had what binder would you recommend for safe daily use as a preventive measure? I love this question. How do we know it's preventive though? Because I don't mean to be cynical, but we are really, really drowning in toxins. And so for most of us, it might be nice to think of as prevention, but really it's treatment. So I would say the two top things I personally love are the BioPure chlorella, as well as, what's the name of Catherine Arnston's chlorella? Energy Bits.
Energy Bits.
She was a sponsor on the summit. So Energy Bits and BioPure chlorella are fantastic. And then I also personally love the propylman and fiber that we mentioned, which is our lean and clean, because they're gentle. And a nice thing, so funny, chlorella, we do chlorella for mycotoxins, and we start with a quarter of a tab because sometimes people react. And when I started, I was like, I'll be fine. Nothing bothers me unless it's gluten. So I took 2 or 3 tabs and promptly had like hot flashes all night. So don't do what your doctor did. Do start slow and small and build up as your body tolerates it. Now I'm up to like 14 tabs a day and I don't notice it at this point, but in the beginning there were hot flashes.
Right, and it depends what your toxic load is. And
are we telling my story yet? Hi.
Yes, it's all about where you're starting and how you're doing. So
yeah.
All right, so should we?
Let's see. There's a question about known correlation between location of psoriasis lesions and accumulation of toxins in internal organs.
Yeah, I don't think there's any,
not that we know of,
any correlation that we know of.
We should ask an acupuncture. That's a good acupuncturist question, because that's like an energy field question.
Yeah.
But no, but the presence of psoriasis is very concerning for toxins and metals.
So there's one question I like to answer, which is what kind of bottle for hiking? So
that was going to be my question. Oh, that's his question.
No, I mean, I do a hard plastic bottle, that reusable water, and then use a filter. So that it's the hard plastics are, as long as they're BPA free, etc. Those are way better. And when you're hiking, you don't want to bring glass because it could shatter pretty easily.
I thought it was because it was heavy.
That too.
It's never going to be perfection. Perfection's going to make you nuts. So what you want to aim for is, how do you improve today in a way that you maybe didn't do yesterday? Because look, we travel, and sometimes I will drink from a plastic water bottle because we are stuck, right? When we were in Lima, Peru, the water was not clean. So we had to drink from plastic. And the whole time I thought, I'm going to hell for this one, but I'm drinking plastic water bottles. I'll just go home and detox, right? And then instead I recovered from COVID. So you are going to have to recognize that perfection isn't real. It's really just about improving the way that you live.
Right.
Okay.
It really is not, you never have a plastic bottle again. It's really, okay, you do what you possibly can, and then you'll detox the rest.
Yeah. All right, let's go back to the question. So sugar. And I noticed that you both mentioned to stay away from sugar. What do you all have for snacks? And assuming that you eat salads, what type of dressing do you use, or do you make your own? What type of meals do you prepare? Would you like that, or would you like me to take that?
Well, you can take that one, but maybe we talk about our routine when we go to conferences.
Oh, that's my
I think
favorite.
That's a
Yeah,
good example.
So last fall, we spent every 7 to 10 days traveling. And if you've been on the summit, you know I'm gluten-free and I don't eat sugar. So let's start to answer the basics of the question. What do you recommend for snacks? I will have recently been able to tolerate pecans and pistachios. Randomly, pistachios and peanuts are very high in mycotoxins, but I can tolerate pistachios and walnuts. I'm sorry, pistachios and pecans and some walnuts. Not cashews, not peanuts, not, yeah, whole long list of nuts. So nuts, when we travel, we make massive salads. We actually have these metal travel containers that are stainless steel.
We bring cutting board, a lightweight cutting board. We bring knives.
We bring an induction cooktop.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I would have shared the picture of Wendy over the induction in her robe over the induction cooktop in a beautiful Las Vegas hotel.
I didn't want to get my outfit dirty, so I put the robe on. But yeah. So Ed can't quite pull that up while we're in this, but so we travel with a lot of stuff. But when we look at snacks, what we're looking at is whole food. So often I'll have an apple for snack or a handful of pecans. I literally never leave the house without at least 2 protein shakes in hand. And I have water that I take along and I shake it as needed. You know, you don't want to blend it ahead of time. It'll get bad, but shake it on demand and it'll have, 20 to 40 grams of protein, depending on how much protein I put in it. And that'll generally keep me satiated. You can take bars it's really hard to find bars that are nut-based that are not too sweet. They often have like 15 to 20 grams of sugar in them, which I would avoid. But if you can find a not sweet bar, that's great. Look for more protein and fiber than sugar. That's a big broad brush stroke.
It's easier to do if you're not dairy sensitive because a lot of the whey bars are whey based and can give you the protein, not as much sugar.
Yeah. The next question that this person had is, will you elaborate on our book? So our book is Dirty Girl, Ditch the Toxins, Look Great and Feel Freaking Amazing. It's based on my story of being a hot, toxic mess, losing half the hair on my head, being, oh geez, I was like 15 pounds heavier than I am now. And I had a rash on my face that would not quit. And we subsequently figured out that I was full of toxins. So we wrote a book about it because we are the poster children for healthy living. We eat organic. We have this massive garden in our house. I don't even drink alcohol, for God's sake, and I don't eat sugar. So I do nothing exciting, and yet I had all these toxins. So we wrote a book on essentially a roadmap on how do you start to clean up your life and how do you improve things. Okay. All right, let's go back to questions that came up. We have a couple more that are pre-submitted, but let's go to this. Oh, hold on. I'm in the wrong section. Bear with me because I really can't walk and talk at the same time. Hang on one second. All right. We talked about chlorella. What is the best to take for a chronic sinus infection from mold mycotoxins with also having a deviated septum? My PCP only recommended antibiotics after a CAT scan. All right.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can take that because
well, there are nice satin sprays for the nasal cavities, and then there's something I'm blanking, Spornex. I'm blanking on the name.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of antibiotic sprays you can do, which are really cool, but it's really that has to come from their physician. The one thing you can do, which a lot of people don't think about, it's very simple, but is either a neti pot or something called Neilmed sinus rinse that you can get at CVS or Walgreens, which is the same idea as neti pot. Doing a neti pot 2 or 3 times a day, and it really has to be a day, really makes a huge difference for people that have any chronic sinus issues. Adding a tiny drop of Echinacea golden seal to that, making sure it doesn't burn your sinuses. Please, please, please.
What's the difference between a tiny drop and a drop? Just I want to make sure that, because people are like, well, how tiny of a drop?
A drop in a whole container should be fine, but make sure it doesn't burn at all or it doesn't hurt at all. Get used to first the salt water and make sure you understand what the difference is. But that actually works amazingly well. And then you can do things like the beg spray and the iBeg spray and all sorts of things, antibiotic sprays basically, and antifungal sprays. Okay.
Do we have a recommendation for well water testing and water filtration You live in an area that has a local beef cattle farm. They only spray manure as a fertilizer. Interesting. I wonder what's in that manure.
So I think doctor's data has a
Yeah.
kit,
We tested our water at our house.
water
actually.
testing kit, so
Yeah.
you can go to doctor's data and they provide a testing kit.
There's a question about how about stainless steel water bottles instead of glass? Fantastic. Totally. Just make sure that you get the 3M testing strips, which test for lead. And they're, I have to say they're little, and I have misplaced like 3 batches. So I keep ordering more and then have to remember where I placed it because they're small. They're like this big, but you can test for lead as a spot testing. And love stainless steel in all forms. We actually replaced all of the glass. We have teenagers and they'll take a lunch, but not if it's heavy. So we replaced all of our glass and all of our plastic with stainless steel. Here's the one downside. Excuse me. You cannot see through stainless steel. So you actually literally have to pick up each thing, flick the top, get the condensation to go away, and then realize what's in it. It drives my kids nuts. They don't eat the leftovers anymore, but they take a lunch. So it's sort of an upside downside.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's see what other questions we have here.
I'm going to scroll up in the chat because we didn't mean, if we missed you, we didn't mean to miss you. We're just looking to see.
Scroll down.
Scroll down. There's a question about what is our opinion of pectin to detox heavy metals and EMFs. Love pectin, especially Pectisol. I mean, Isaac Elias was on the summit and his product is fantastic. The Pectisol. It's
The
really
pesticide,
amazing.
the modified citrus pectin is really the way to go.
Chlorella should not. I think chlorella acts as its own binder. I don't think it needs a specific binder. It's part of its own binding.
Yep.
And yes, there's going to be a replay. And let's see, recommendations for someone who has a difficult time metabolizing vitamin B12. Great question. And then there's a follow-up to that, but we'll come to that.
Well, I think, yeah, the B12 I think is really important question. So most of us, so there's about, I don't know what the statistics are, 30% of people have a genetic issue that they can't metabolize regular B vitamins into make regular B vitamins into active B vitamins or methylated B vitamins. So what you want to do is when you get B vitamins, especially B12, you want to get the methylated form, the methylcobalamin. You don't want to use cyanocobalamin, which is the cheap, and that form. That's one way to look to see if you have cheap supplements. Is if they use cyanocobalamin in there, it's a cheap supplement, and do not buy it. You don't want any artificial colors, flavors in your supplements. Make sure clean supplements, good methylcobalamin, methylfolate, and make sure it's all methylated.
Then the follow-up to that is regarding your supplements. Do you buy directly from the companies that make them? So our company, we both purchase directly from physician grade supplements. They all test for the presence of mycotoxins, heavy metal contaminants. And then we also manufacture some of our own supplements, and those are also all tested for the presence of contaminants, heavy metals, mycotoxins.
And what they're supposed to have in them.
Yeah, that's true. They have what they're supposed to, and they don't have what they're not supposed to. Let's see. MG, this is a tough question. Is there a cure for tinnitus after years of parasitic, viral, bacterial, and co-infections? I never want to say to someone that you're stuck with what you got, because that feels really depressing. So what I would say is, I don't know, but it's worth exploring and working with a functional medicine provider to see if you can get to the root cause of it and fix it.
Yeah, tinnitus tends to be a challenge to fix, not undoable, but it's definitely a challenge. Anything from simple things like CoQ10 to things like magnet therapy and everything in between. So definitely stick with it. Hope is not lost, and you have to try different solutions.
Okay, we have another question.
What cleans spores in the gut? I'm not sure I know what that means.
So like mold spores.
Mold spores? I mean, binders are what you want to do for mold spores.
Oh, Susie, I love this question. What is a good substitute for something like Roundup? Okay. Well, it depends what your goal is. I'm pausing because I was about to say something kind of sarcastic, but I don't want to say that. So what I want to say is it depends what the goal is. I think I shared at one point about I have a patient who has really high levels of pesticides and glyphosate in her body. And I was like, do you spray your lawn? And she said, well, my dad does. And I said, well, ask your dad what he loves more. Does he love his green lawn or does he love his daughter? And her mom was on the call because she was a teenager, and her mom was like, oh, he totally loves his green lawn more than his daughter. No question. That's not even a hard question. So that was sort of a non-starter. So this is a huge question. And I would say you and I haven't talked about this, but I have been wanting to talk to you about converting our yard into an edible landscape.
Like we did.
No, the grass itself, like getting rid of all the grass. So
well, let me answer a few things while you're. So one thing we're doing with our lawn, I mean, if you need perfect mono grass, there's no way to do it without chemicals.
right,
Let's
because
start there.
nature loves diversity. Nature doesn't like
So
monoculture.
if you need a perfect, that's all there is. Now, the way we're doing it is we're putting, for any patch that we're worried about, we're putting in compost on top, planting grass seed, but we also don't mind if there's clovers. Clovers are great. They're really good for the soil. They're nitrogen fixators. They're good for the bees because their flowers come up and feed the bees. So we actually like a diversity in our lawn. It doesn't look perfect, but we're okay with that. And
yeah, I mean, there's other things. There's a great article in the New York Times about 3 weeks ago, maybe, to get rid of your lawn. This is totally unpopular. Okay. So I acknowledge this. If this is not where you are, it's okay. We can still be friends. But essentially, get rid of your lawn and replace it with things that are better for the environment, that don't require pesticides, and they're either perennial flowering or good for the bees or fragrant or edible. So there are forms of creeping thyme. There are forms of different flowers that you can start to replace the grass with. And I meant to talk to you about it, and then you were gone for the day, I was gone for the day, and I forgot. But that's something that we're going to be doing, which we can still keep the clovers, but to replace segments with walkable. The nice thing is you can walk on them, and it creates a lot of diversity, and you can mow it so that it's not like you come home and you're living in the
jungle.
Overgrown jungle. Exactly. Which doesn't look nice. Okay. Going back to the question about pernicious anemia.
There's another question on that.
Oh, there's another question here. Hold on. Spraying manure is toxic. Left my home county where they did that. Well, we use, when you say manure, are we talking about compost?
I think this is more for commercial farming.
Is this the beef farm?
This is not where we're strong, so we're gonna leave that one.
Yeah. There's a question from Sue. Sue, first off, I'm really sorry you're going through that. Okay. Sue writes, I'm currently going through chemo for peritoneal cancer. I ordered C60 and started taking it yesterday. Great. Are there 2 to 3 other things that I can or should do that will make the chemo more effective with fewer side effects? So I would talk to your team about the cold cap, because that can help with retaining hair. Sometimes the chemo will have you lose your hair. And then it's sort of a staged thing. So if you're in the midst of chemo, you're going to want to focus on that. If your providers are open to doing other things, then that's a conversation to have, whether they'd be okay with vitamin C IVs while you're in chemo. Some providers are, and some providers are not. And then the other thing that you can look at is high dose marijuana, if it's legal where you are, because it's a tremendous antioxidant, and also melatonin, which is a tremendous antioxidant.
And melatonin in like the 10 to 20 milligram range, if not higher.
Yeah.
Not the 1 or 2 milligram range.
Yeah. Okay, let's close this and go back to the questions. Let's see. To avoid petrol exhaust, is it PETA or PETA? PETA? Are you in another country? It must be petrol is another country, I think.
Yes.
To avoid exhaust from mowing, adopt rescued rabbit, sheep, or goats. Or if you could live near us, we have a whole like tribe of bunnies that basically eat everything in the garden and the lawn. So yes, totally.
We're gonna be making bunny stew soon.
Yeah, I'm not peeling that though. So we yeah, totally love. There are places that will do goat scaping. You can rent them and they'll the goats will even eat poison ivy. So if you have poison ivy, you can get goats and they'll eat it back, or you can just rent a goat. You don't have to keep them forever. Okay.
Go back to our
Oh,
questions.
another question. And we had another question also. Let's go back. Bear with me. There's lots of clicks here. Okay. We had a question. What are the odds that I have heavy metals?
That's a
Pretty
tough
high.
one.
If you live on the earth. And so here's the thing, if you were born before 1978, the odds are pretty good, because in 1978, it was outlawed to have paint and lead paint. I'm sorry, lead and paint. And in 1975, it was outlawed to have lead in gasoline. So if you were born before 1978, or if you were born to someone who was born before 1978, the odds are good that you have lead.
Which is everybody, you mean?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I'll say, at least from our experience, when we test people mostly when they're sick or when they want to find optimal health. And we find probably about 75-80% of people do have higher than desired lead or mercury levels. I will say that I agree with you, even if they're below the desired levels in terms of has desired levels, you still have some.
Right.
There's never zero. It's never zero.
Well, I'm waiting for these studies to come out on what happens. So let's back up a sec. Mercury is put out by a whole bunch of different things, and a lot of mining procedures release mercury or use mercury, and then it's released into the environment, the air, the groundwater, the seawater, and forests sequester or hold on to mercury. When wildfires burn, the forests release the mercury back into the environment. Where does it go? It's a heavy metal. It goes to the ground and the seawater. So I know that there's a study or two that are starting for California to see what's the impact on mercury in California from all of these wildfires that are releasing mercury back into the environment. Is it impacting the fish? Is it impacting the food? And so the odds are pretty high that we've been exposed. I mean, for example, I have a patient in my practice. She's 32 years old. So what does that put her? She was born in the 90s. She was born in like 1991. So way past mercury, mercury fillings. She's never had a mercury filling. She was born to someone who was born before 1978. And her mercury level is 74. And she has metastatic recurrent breast cancer that has recurred 3 times in a year. Like, it's very aggressive. And I was like, we really need to focus on toxin removal, because toxins are extremely inflammatory and we really want to get rid of it. There's actually a question from Petya who just came in.
Yeah, let me just finish that in terms of, we've seen kids, I mean, we see autistic kids, we see kids with ADHD that have high levels. I mean, and then that's one treatment. That's not the whole thing for most people, but if they have that, and a lot of people have poor detox pathways, that really messes them up.
Yeah. How do you treat copper toxicity? Let's see, what tests can be done to check the copper levels except from the hair mineral analysis test? I personally am not a huge fan of hair analysis, because it only shows what you're voluntarily getting rid of. And that means that you have to assume, like Ed mentioned, that the detox pathways are functioning. But if they're overloaded or dysfunctional, you're going to store that in your bones, your organs, your tissue. So you're not going to really see what's present in the hair. I'm personally, I think you and I are on the same page, that we like urine provoked testing, not just baseline. Baseline tells you if you've had a recent exposure that you're dealing with, but provoked, that pulls it out of your bones, your organs, your tissue, and actually allows you to start seeing what's present. So for copper toxicity, I mean, obviously, whatever the source of it, try to get rid of the source of it. And zinc and copper compete for the transport mechanism in and out of the cells. So increasing the zinc can often displace the copper. So even starting with zinc is very helpful.
So we have about 3 minutes left.
Yeah.
Let's do maybe one more question.
Let's say, which one do you like the best?
Should we talk about mitochondria? Because
it's kind of the root of all health.
Yeah. So, or energy at least.
And so what are they?
So we had a question about, can mitochondria really recover? And yes, mitochondria can recover. So really, again, it comes down to, so everything, the way we think about things. God, that's a noisy keyboard.
I know. So I'm replying to Joy's question
Uh,
about can provoked testing causes herx,
that-
which we're taking offline because we may not get to it, but I'm going to reply to you in the
Yeah.
chat, and my keyboard's loud.
So when you think about health, we want to think big picture, optimal health in terms of the body wants to be well. What does the body need? Vitamins, minerals, nutrients, hormones. What does the body need to get rid of? Food sensitivities, heavy metals, molds, etc. Give the body what it needs, help it get rid of what it doesn't need, and then let the body heal itself. So that's true for everything. So in terms of mitochondria recovery, what's the source? Is it overuse? Is it toxins that are poisoning, which is mostly the majority of what's happening? And then how do we give back things like CoQ10 and carnitine and all the mitochondrial resources that it can use? So the answer is yes. Most everything can be recovered, and it takes time and it takes knowledge, and there's always new things that are coming out that continue to add. I think you're dealing with, all right, let's see what else we have. What if I have poor energy, should I be exercising? And the quick answer is if exercise makes you feel poorly, then you want to be really mindful and very slow exercise, but really gently. On the other hand, if you have low energy and exercise actually helps invigorate you, make sure you're not exhausted the next day, but really do exercise, because that really does exercise is one of the best things you can do for your brain, for your heart, for your lymph,
For your detox.
anything and everything. Exercise. The only reason you shouldn't exercise is if you're that sick and that makes you feel poorly, or you have POTS or something of that nature.
Yeah, always exercise to the level at which that works for your body.
Really want to thank everybody for joining us, because it's just a privilege and honor.
Yeah.
And
thank you. I want to tell him something. We're going to have another webinar, which is on May 2nd, which is a Tuesday at the same time, so 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. And we're going to talk all at that point about like, okay, what's next, right? You've gone through this. And now if you're looking for how do you test for your toxins, we're going to talk about how do you test for your toxins as the next step. So we'd love you to come back. Oh, and Brett's asking if this was valuable for you. First off, thank you for being here. And second off, if you can type yes in the chat so we know that this was impactful for you. And please feel free to follow us on Instagram, Facebook. We're on all the channels. You can subscribe to our newsletter. Like really, it's been a pleasure working with you. And from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for your commitment to your health and your time and your energy. And you're like, it's great being with you. Thank you. Thanks for being so engaged. All right. Truly a worldwide webinar. Thank you all for being here. And it's our pleasure to answer your questions, and hope you are well and that you take the next step for your health. Thank you.